Two-week-long climate summit in Copenhagen is set to wrap up today. While protesters made news outside with sometimes violent clashes, world leaders from 192 countries have made little news inside. Regardless of the outcome, that's not inside, as you can see. Sometimes I'm sure that's what the delegates would like to do to one another. Regardless of the outcome, this international gathering is seen as a crucial test of the world's ability to work together to solve a climate problem, a problem that some say is the end of the world and others say doesn't even exist. So what do you make of it? Joe Krier, president of Krier Wealth Management, is here to discuss the summit, how it can impact you, and how you may be able to benefit financially from it or not. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Stacey.
So what's the gist of this climate summit?
Well, you know, you and Casey talked a little bit ago about President Obama's speech that he gave about an hour ago. And, you know, the point of this is to try to get the world community working together at some common goal. Some people think that it's the end of the world if we don't slow down emissions. Other people, as you said, think that all the data is bogus. But from a cooperation perspective, it's important that all of the major countries in the world get together and actually agree on something.
They get together and at least are discussing it anyway.
Definitely.
So here are some of the objectives of the climate summit. Whether they'll reach an agreement on it has yet to be determined. They want to reduce emissions of industrialized countries. That includes America, right?
Oh, definitely. You know, and looking back at the Kyoto Treaty that was passed in '95, the United States of America never even passed it. So they're trying to get a workable solution here that reduces emissions, controls emissions from developing countries, puts some money into the mix, and then an agreement where we have some reasonable management of the money, where it's not just pumped out there and some rogue czar somewhere is pushing dollars around.
Well, presumably, wouldn't it be under the control of the United Nations?
It would be, and that doesn't always guarantee that the money gets managed well. You know, there's a lot of participants there, and there's committees, and, you know, if you look at the United States Congress and their inability to agree on things, imagine 192 countries trying to agree on how the money's going to be handled.
So it's interesting, this world body gets together to discuss this climate change and come up with some hard and fast rules that the U.S. may not even agree to sign, or other countries, especially China, who's a big polluter out there.
Yeah, and Obama, to his credit, put out a sort of a framework. You know, he's not hoping to really walk away from there with a hard signed contract, so to speak, but he put out a framework that proposed perhaps some kind of a formula based on economic output from a country, you know, determines how much they have to put into it. And looking at the amount of emissions they're putting out now will determine what percentage of a reduction they're going to do. And the U.S. yesterday, Hillary Clinton proposed that we want to cut our emissions by 20% by the year 2015, I believe it was, and 80% by the year 2050.
All right, let's take a look at some of the proposals being put out there. New technology for research grants, retrofitting homes and businesses, cap and trade type proposals, which are very controversial, and incentives versus penalties. So with all of this being said, whatever is decided there at that climate summit at the 11th hour now, what does this mean for investors out there?
Yeah, well, you know, there's always money to be made on things. And, you know, these proposals that you just outlined there are more domestic initiatives, you know, and those are the kind of things that have been on the table for the last year since Obama took office. Some people say that for every green job that's created, you lose 2 old-fashioned jobs. Any way you slice it, there's new technology coming down the line, and there is money to be made off of that. There's investments that go towards those things. If you look at the solar industry, it's proliferating right now on a global basis. The wind power industry, there's just a lot of things happening. Granted, it's not going to replace our use of fossil fuels, but if you keep your eyes out here, you can be into some pretty cutting-edge investments, and you can do pretty well with that.
All right, something to think about. Thank you, Joe. Joe Krier is president of Krier Wealth Management.